welcome back to JG3 Reviews. My name is James and I do fountain pen, ink, and paper reviews. I like to share with you things I find in the fountain pen world, and sometimes I get to share with you pens that somebody else has found. Today, and in a few of the next several videos, I'm going to share with you some Waterman fountain pens that come from the personal collection of one of our viewers who has generously decided to share with you their pens and sent them to me to share with you. So this is the first in this series. This is the Waterman Phileas and its culture or kultur, depending on your language of choice or your postcode or your zip code or whatever. And this is a pen that was adapted to be a beginner fountain pen. It has been discontinued, but you can find these pens still out there on the market in new old stock or used form. This one is new old stock, so it's never been written with. This is basically a first impressions review of this pen. So let's zoom in on this pen and we'll look at its design. We'll see how it writes, and we'll see, is it worth hunting down on eBay and various pen sellers one of the Phileas culture pens? Let's flip that camera and dive right in. Here we have the Waterman Phileas Kultur, a plastic pen in red, really nice looking pen. You have a nice presentation box with your cartridge that is included. Converter is not included with this pen. You may find a used one that comes with one, but normally it was not included. This one's new old stock, but it does fit international standard cartridges and converters. So if you've got one lying around, you're already in business anyway, right? This was a pen that was in the range of, say, a Pilot Metropolitan or a Lamy Safari, in that beginner budget-friendly range of around $20. So that would give you some idea, and this is quite a while back that price reference is too. And of course, what you're going to find them at on the used market is really going to vary. So shop around and find a good deal if you feel like this is a pen that you would like. Okay, let's look at the design. So again, it is a red plastic pen with silver trim and a black cap at the end of the cap, a black finial at the end of the cap. It is a nice spring-loaded stamped steel clip that works really well. I like that. And then just a very simple body that comes down to a conical taper at the end. This barrel, by the way, is interchangeable with the emblem's barrel. That's what that is back there on the blue crab, by the way. That's one of only two Watermans that I own, with the exception of a vintage Waterman that's coming in the mail someday soon to a video near you soon as well. Anyway, interchangeable barrel, which is not important, but interesting. The grip section, if you're familiar with the emblem, is also the same, except that this one is a clear acrylic, where that one is solid black. And on the upmarket Phileas, it is also the same grip section, but black. So if you like see-through demonstrator style grip sections, then you get one in this pen, and I am actually kind of a sucker for that sort of thing, so I like it. All right, as we look at the nib, it might be familiar if you've seen the more upscale Phileas pens before, because it is the same nib. It just does not have any of the gold plating on it, so just a stainless steel nib, but again, the same engraving. This one is a fine. My experience with Waterman fines has been good, so I'm anxious to put ink in this and see how the pen writes, but generally they write quite well. Plastic feed, and then as we remove the barrel, you'll see that that metal trim ring stays with the grip section. You have plastic threads in and out, and just a normal barrel, but nicely polished, nicely finished, feels good, looks good, no problems there. And yeah, looks like it ought to be a great pen. Now, as far as somebody's going to ask about eyedroppering, you would definitely need silicone grease and an O-ring. Don't know if you need to remove that metal band or not, but I would think with grease and an O-ring, you ought to be in business, maybe even just with silicone grease, but your mileage will vary, and you do these things at your own risk. Speaking of our own risk, how about we ink this pen up and see how it writes? Okay, let's see how this pen writes. And again, this is a Waterman, lest you've forgotten, Phileas. Kultur. This is a fine. Kind of as you can see, that is a European fine, right? you kind of get used to kind of a standard fine from particular countries, and you start to see it countries and regions. You can kind of tell, can't you? Not surprisingly, this is actually a really nice writing pen. Nice balance. I would write with this one posted. It just feels right. Very well balanced. And let me just say something about the design of the cap. So this curve and taper as the cap meets the body is part of why this is a comfortable pen to write with. Posted. I don't think some pen companies pay enough attention to how the cap feels if your hand happens to meet right where the cap and barrel meet. Many pen makers make that a sharp edge, and it's obnoxious and annoying. That's why you have a lot of people who end up never writing with their pens posted, and that just shouldn't be. So I do appreciate this curve here, and it makes that a more comfortable pen to write with, because that does kind of hit right where my hand is, and I don't care. I guess it could be more comfortable the other way, but it's not bad at all. And I appreciate it. Sometimes it's just, little things, just little things that help. Line width, again, is fine. Get a little bit more pressure. You can get maybe just a little bit of line variation, but I wouldn't push it. One, it's not my pen, and two, this is not meant to be a flexi pen or anything like that, but it does write really quite nicely. Let's test this for wetness. I think I forgot that a time or two here lately. And that is a really nice amount of ink, I think, for a fine line. So that's a good thing in this way, that when you have some fine pens, they write so fine and so dry that if you have an ink that has nice color variation or maybe a little bit of sheen, then it doesn't show up that well most of the time on a really fine pen. In fact, my emblem is that way. It's so fine, almost an extra fine, and I think I'm going to do some massaging to that nib, because it needs to lay the ink down just a little bit more, real frankly, like this one. This one, I like this fine better. Let's see if it keeps up with my speed test. Perfect. This little lift right here was me. I could feel it. If you're watching, you could probably see it, but that just went across that line and squiggle really well. So if it can do this well, it's going to do your handwriting well, right? Okay, let's do one quick dad joke, and then we'll do a size comparison, and I'll give you my final thoughts. Pens here that are all kind of either in the same price range or the same class or both. So this would be a stiff, competitive market for the Phileas, of course, but it is a different pen from every one of these. They all bring something to the table a little bit different. So you have the Phileas here, similar in size, but not much else, is the Hongdian, and this is the Blue Light of Hope version of the Black Forest pen. You have a Jinhao 86, another plastic pen, this one with a stainless steel cap, a nice pen, really great bargain, writes well. And then you have the Platinum Placer, underrated pen, excellent, very good. And then the Waterman Graduate, which is a pen that I think they still offer, and that is a great pen as well. You can check out my review, link in the description below. Then on this side, you have the Lamy Safari in charcoal. I probably don't need to say much about that. Then you have the TWSBI Swipe, an excellent newer offering from TWSBI that would lose to the Phileas, by the way, in terms of a useful clip, but is an excellent pen with also a clear, transparent section. And then the Faber-Castell Hexo, probably the most expensive pen in this lineup, but a great fountain pen. And then the Parker Vector, an excellent pen that, like the Phileas, I got as new old stock in that dark blue that I wanted. And here you have all the pens posted, which always changes the dynamic of the pens, doesn't it? And there we have the pens unposted. Again, changes the whole dynamic of the way these pens size up. I just find all that interesting, and it plays into the balance and the feel in hand, and that's why we share these things with you. So let's sum up the view of the pen. I came across a social media conversation while I was doing some research on this pen that asked the question I think I'm going to ask as well, and that is, Why, Waterman? Why did you discontinue what was a very affordable pen? And I understand maybe, tastes change and sales change and things like that. But this pen does indeed seem competitive in terms of what it offers. Maybe it was the price or something else that was at issue. I don't know. But you will notice in this size comparison of these pens, and it's a pretty good little cross section of pens in this price range, it has the biggest nib, which for some people is something they really do like. It has a nice spring-loaded clip, which I think is really good. And it is just a plastic pen, but it is put together quite nicely and a very comfortable, well-balanced pen with a nice grip with good dimensions, and it posts and balances well. So I'm going to end this review asking the same question. Why, Waterman, did you end this offering? And then asking you, if you have this pen or you have experience with this pen, do you think they should have kept making this pen? If they brought it back, maybe with some new updates for 2023, would you be excited about it and add that to your pen list? What do you think about this pen, especially if you own one? We want to hear from you. God bless you. Have a great week, and I'll see you in the next review.